Enviroline products available worldwide. Another AkzoNobel e-learning module. Today we're going to discuss the Enviroline Global Offer. Currently there are 17 products available in North America, some with additional low cure capabilities. 4 of these products are supported worldwide. We begin with an introduction and move on with performance characteristics and end uses, surface preparation and application, quality control and technical inspection, repair procedure, and summary. The content of this presentation is intended for training purposes only, based on application parameters and general recommendations. Always consult with the latest data sheets, application guideline, and project specification if there is one. Now for an introductory of Enviroline products available worldwide. Introduction to Enviroline. Paul Mealy, owner and original formulator, set about in 1958 to manufacture a high-performance epoxy lining for oil and gas that meets 3 criteria. Fast cure, getting their tank back in service quickly, saving the owner time, as time is money. Thick film at 500 to 1500 microns, lending durability and longevity, extending inspection timelines. And lastly, safety, protecting the personnel applying the lining, working in confined space, keeping the lower explosion limit levels non-existent, although Mr. Mealy didn't realize it then. Today, these products are helping to protect the environment with minimal or no release of solvent to the atmosphere, delivering a high-performance epoxy and AkzoNobel lining technology. In a nutshell, thick film, one coat, low or no emissions, rapid return to service, and as a bonus, offering low temperature cure characteristics, working in the oil and gas, chemical, water, and wastewater markets, to include refineries, terminal storage, below and above ground pipeline, both internal, external application, chemical plants, tank internals, tank trucks, rail car, water and wastewater plants, high temperature immersion chemistries, oil production and processing. Advantages of fast return to service. Taking a high elevation look and assuming the same tank size for all 3 scenarios, this construction time chart shows the typical difference of a 2-coat 5-day cure, a 1-coat 5-day cure, and representative of Enviroline products, a 1-coat 1-day cure, saving time, money, and delivering the asset back to the owner as quickly as possible. We will begin with Enviroline 124, with origins going back 60 years as a quick-set epoxy to adhere to the steel cover and closing up of an existing underground oil storage tank after lining the interior and making it ready for a quick burial. It is a solvent-free 2-component polycyclamine cured Novolac epoxy and is highly viscous, can be applied at 1,000 to 3,000 microns in a single coat. Benefits are good adhesion to a less than perfect surface prep, meaning a high-tech product, low-tech application. Single coat application by trowel or knife, and for the most experienced, airless spray is available. Fast return to service in 2 hours at 25 C. Excellent impact and abrasion resistance. Resistant to most fuel and oil commodities such as gasoline blends, biodiesel, crude, and ethanol. Chemical resistant to sodium hydroxide, hydrochloric, nitric, and sulfuric acids. Can be applied to concrete as well as steel. With low temp cure capability, can be applied to substrate as low as a -7 C. Drawbacks are if you intend for spray application will require heated plural component equipment. The incomparable Enviroline 376F series. Enviroline 376F is the cornerstone lining system of the oil and gas industry. The first project with Enviroline, or at the time manufactured by IECC Industrial Environmental Coatings Corporation, was completed in 1995 with 376F60 for sour water service in the largest refinery on the West Coast, and it is still going strong after 25 years. With 4 products to choose from, Enviroline 376F30, 376F30LT, 376F60, and 376F60LT helps the owner with options depending on the season, cold atmospheric conditions, and corrosion impact to the asset. They are a solvent-free 2-component 100% solids polycyclamine cured Novolac epoxy, applied in a single coat at 500 to 2,000 microns, depending on which product you are applying. We recommend Enviroline 376F30 applied at 500 to 1,000 microns and 376F60 applied at 750 to 2000 microns. Enviroline 376F60 can be applied as low as 20 mils. However, we'll need a warm substrate and a hot mix to help with flow and minimizing discontinuities in the film. Applications depending on the severity of corrosion of the surface. Enviroline 376F30 manages new to moderately pitted substrate and for heavy corrosion. Enviroline 376F60 works extremely well. Now on to the benefits of Enviroline 376F. Enviroline 376F60 and Enviroline 376F60LT are recognized per API Recommended Practices 652 as a reinforced thick film epoxy and accepted by API Standard 653 as one of the safeguards for long-term inspection interval. See API 652-653 e-learning module for more information. Excellent resistance to crude oil up to 82 degrees C. Fresh and saltwater immersion up to 60 degrees C. Manages immersion in sour crudes, all types of finished fuels, biodiesel, solvents, and strong caustics. Low temp hardener for both 376F30 and 376F60 resins are one and the same. The regular hardeners are not interchangeable. Can be applied to a substrate as low as -7C. Takes about 6 days to cure. I witnessed this on the North Slope, Alaska, in the winter several years ago, where the outside temperatures were a calm -45 to 50 C. Fast return to service in 14 hours at 25 C. I am not aware of another product with a faster cure for hydrocarbon immersion service in this industry, or one that can cure as low as a -7 C. Excellent impact and abrasion resistance. The drawbacks are poor resistance to acids, a recommended plural component equipment, however, can be applied with single leg airless equipment and an experienced crew. Enviroline 376F60LT should not be applied over 45 mils in one coat on vertical surfaces or may sag. Enviroline 405 HTR, one of the toughest, most versatile lining products I've had the pleasure of working with. An ultra-high solids, two-component, 100% solids polycyclamine cured Novolac epoxy with glass flake and fiber reinforcement can be applied in one coat at 500 to 1500 microns. And like 376F60 is a reinforced thick film epoxy as defined per API 652 and accepted by API 653 as an equal to fiberglass reinforced products. Suitable for immersion in crude oils, fuels, biofuels, solvents, strong caustics, and some alcohols like propylene and ethylene glycol. Excellent resistance to crude oil up to 149 C, fresh and saltwater immersion up to 121 C, produced water up to 149 C, fast return to service 14 hours at 25 C, excellent impact and abrasion resistance, single coat application, excellent abrasion resistance. Drawbacks are requires plural component equipment and likes the substrate warm, at least above 15 C. Enviroline 2405 is almost as versatile as Enviroline 405 HTR, an ultra-high solids two-component, 100% solid polycyclamine cured epoxy with Teflon additive, applied in a single coat at 400 to 750 microns. Excellent resistance to crude oil up to 149 C, fresh and saltwater immersion to 121 C, produce water to 121 C, can be utilized as a CUI, managing up to 204 C, suitable for immersion in crude oil, fuels, biofuels, and strong caustics. Fast return to service in 48 hours at 25 C. Excellent impact and abrasion resistant, excellent abrasion resistant with low surface energy properties. Single leg airless application, excellent airless application properties. Drawbacks, resistance to strong solvents, acids, and alcohols like ethanol. Typical end uses for the global range of Enviroline products. Applications for Enviroline 124 in maintenance and new construction. And as I mentioned prior, the origins of this product going back 60 years. Formulated then for sealing up a relined below-ground oil storage tank manhole cover and now predominantly utilized for pipeline girth weld and holiday repair. Excellent adhesion to fusion bonded epoxy. Coated pipe, lab testing completed in AkzoNobel Reuchlingen lab, confirmed excellent adhesion and compatibility with Resicoat epoxy powders with a passing grade on high temperature cathodic disbondment testing. Performing as high as 82C in buried environments, can also apply as a tank lining repair for Enviroline 376F and other linings, provided proper prep and chemical immersion compatibility. Please consult with technical support for immersion resistance. Resistant to crude oil, aviation fuels, and gasoline blends, including ethanol. Clarifiers and wastewater linings, and performing localized repair, putting the asset back in service quickly. Resistant to a wide range of chemicals, works well as a high-build thick film for pit filling on older tank floors, up to 3,000 microns, as well as crude storage rivet repair, stopping leaks on the external shell. At times can be done with a product level up. May have to drop product level below repair location and take a couple applications to stop the weeping. Applications for Enviroline 376F. This is one tough lining system for maintenance and new construction with a decade of global history, decades in North America, with pipeline interiors, exteriors, atmospheric and buried, passing robust cathodic despondent tests at elevated temperatures. Resistant to crude oil, aviation fuels, diesel fuel, biodiesel, gasoline blends, and ethanol. Compliance with Energy Institute Standard 1541, second edition 2016, provides performance requirements for protective coating systems that may be used. In aviation fuel handling systems, the standard, recognized worldwide, is an important third-party testing protocol for linings and coatings performance in aviation fuels immersion service. This shows the customer that Enviroline 376F60 passed the performance standard for corrosion and chemical resistant safe storage of aviation fuels. EI 1541 should be on every aviation fuel storage owner's specification. Resistant to caustics, managing greater than 20% sodium hydroxide at 71C, less than 20% at 40C. Clarifiers and wastewater treatment plants, spools, chemical processing, secondary containment. And I cannot emphasize enough how important Enviroline 376F60 has been recognized by API 652-653 as a reinforced thick film epoxy, equal in performance to an FRP system, applied in less time at less cost to the owner. Applications for Enviroline 405 HTR. For maintenance and new construction, with thousands of lined, fixed and mobile assets and miles of buried pipeline, interiors and exteriors, managing elevated temperatures and excellent resistance to cathodic despondent. As a versatile lining, resistant to crudes, diesel, biodiesel, gasoline blends, and ethanol. You will not find a better lining system for the demanding immersion environments found in upstream oil and gas production. Produce water, downhole tubular, heater treaters, separators, polishers, clarifiers. A strong lining for various caustic services. Spools, resistant to elevated temperature chemical immersion services. Meets requirements of the latest API 652-653 publications as a reinforced thick film lining, formulated with a fiber reinforced system, allowing the maximum internal inspection intervals. Also great for secondary containment due to a wide range of elevated temperature and chemical resistance. Applications for Enviroline 2405. Great for maintenance and new construction applications with more than 1,000 vessels in a short time since final product release in 2015. Finding a home with OEM and rail cars due to versatility, ease of application, and fast throughput. And for rail cars, 2405 is FDA compliant for both wet and dry foods. Miles of pipeline, both interior, exteriors, atmospheric, and buried. Resistant to crude oil, diesel fuel, and finished fuels. Excellent at elevated temperature chemical immersion service. Also great in the oil field production. Produce water, downhole tubular, heater treaters, separators, polishers, clarifiers, and at elevated temperatures. Demineralized water. Very tough test at 100C for 12 months and passed. Manages under installation at 204 degrees C. Resistant to caustics. Spools. Meets requirements of API 652-653 as a non-reinforced thick film lining system. Here's just a few selected case histories of the owners and applications with the products listed in this module. Rather than call out the list, I'll leave you with 30 seconds to review. Well, it's only 15 seconds. I think silence is long enough. But for more history, you can look up track records on the MPC product data site. And now moving on to surface preparation. Proper surface preparation is the backbone to maximizing the service life of a high-performance immersion lining system. Recommended site requirements. Cleanliness requires organization in keeping the job site clean and safe. Contamination, as we discussed earlier, will cause a shorter life cycle and/or premature failure in the lining system. Moisture ingress causes degradation of prepared steel and will need to be reabraded to specification if compromised. It is important that the job site is set up correctly, that you have adequate supply of electricity, and that your equipment is in good working condition. Important power sources include compressors for blasting and spraying, required to deliver enough oil and moisture-free clean air as necessary. Ventilation is important to maintain a safe working atmosphere. Lighting to ensure good visibility in all phases of a lining project. Dehumidification to maintain environmental conditions, and important that the equipment is sized to the space and recommend holding the humidity below 45%. Heating to maintain steel temperatures in accordance with the data sheets and application guideline during application and curing of the lining. Storage facility is helpful to maintain the temperature, protecting the products from cold and thermal cycling, possibly for preheat of materials prior to use. All Enviroline products should be in a temperature-controlled space and warmed up 24 hours before application. The importance of surface preparation. Successful in-service performance of Enviroline, as with any other coating systems, is ultimately dependent upon correct surface preparation. Important factors to consider are removing surface contaminants is the first step, and most important, because if contaminants are left on the substrate during the next step of abrading the surface, will most likely drive the contaminants into the steel, setting the lining up for a premature failure. Abrading the steel in accordance with the data sheet application guidelines and specification, if available, promotes adhesion of the lining. Completing these two steps correctly maximizes the service life of the lining system, minimizing the maintenance costs. And to wrap it up, poor surface preparation will cause a shorter life cycle and/or premature failure. Surface preparation considerations. Steel should have all weld spatter removed, and weld seams and edges should be rounded or smoothed. Otherwise, need to be most diligent when stripe coating porous welds and anomalies left on the substrate. All surfaces must be clean, dry, and free from contamination such as dirt, dust, soluble salts, oil, and grease. Check your product application guidelines for maximum permissible soluble salts, which is very important for elevated temperature aqueous solutions. Coatings and linings are permeable, and eventually water will get to the substrate, and if there's contaminant left, will create a corrosion cell and blister the lining. Allowable soluble salt levels may differ depending upon cargo and temperature. Acceptable soluble salt levels drop as temperature goes up, meaning the higher the service temperature, the cleaner the steel is required. Generally, method of preparation is by dry abrasive blast, achieving an SA 2.5 or an ACE number 2 or an SP10. These three standards achieve similar steel cleanliness. Certain aggressive immersion conditions, such as elevated temperature aqueous solutions, may require a higher level of cleanliness. An SA3, an ACE1, or an SP5, again achieving similar steel cleanliness. A sharp angular profile of 75 to 125 microns is required for thick film linings. My favorite topic, the application of Enviroline products. Environmental conditions for application. Most Enviroline products will not adequately cure below 10°C. Substrate, air, and material temperatures should all be ideally between 15 and 50°C. As discussed earlier in this module, we do have low temperature cure products curing as low as a -7°C. Enviroline, like all coatings and linings, should only be applied to surfaces at least 3°C above the dew point. Humidity for most Enviroline products should not exceed 85%. Dehumidification, air conditioning, and/or heating equipment may be required to control environmental conditions, and as always with clean air, particularly from the source of heat if required. Exposure to UV may reduce overcoating intervals, and to be aware of the minimum and maximum recoat windows as recommended in the data sheets and application guidelines. Always check product data sheet and application guidelines for specific information. Application, preparation, and stripe coating. Before any coatings are applied, the area to be coated must be clean, dry, and free from contaminants. Stripe coating should be applied before the first full coat of Enviroline, or spray applied on welds, corners, angles, and brushed in well using a stiff brush or one with half the bristles cut back to make it stiffer, and work the material in with the spray applicator coming back within the recoat window and apply a full coat, wet on wet. Stripe coating is a critical step in the coating process and can ensure long-term performance. Stripe coating should be carried out on all edges, corners, irregular shapes and angles, welds and difficult to reach locations. Example of the areas are to the right. Most holidays are found at these locations if stripe coating is not properly exercised. Here's an example of proper stripe coating. For more viscous materials like Enviroline may require a stiffer brush, or like the brush in this picture, taking a pair of scissors and cutting back the bristles about halfway. Mixing for single leg airless application. Most Enviroline products are 2-to-1 ratio and are supplied in 2 containers as a unit. Always mix a complete unit in the proportions supplied. Once a unit has been mixed, it must be used within its working pot life. Important that both components are preheated for 24 hours before use between 30 and 35 C, although the required temperatures differ by product. Agitate part A, agitate part B. Scrape the sides and bottom of the container with an 8-inch margin trowel. The perfect tool for this, as well as emptying the mixed bucket and scraping the hopper. Take care to keep the mixing tool separate for part A and B and scraping the hopper. Combine part B, scraping the bucket clean into part A, and mix thoroughly with a power agitator until color is uniform. It takes about 2 minutes. Typical RPM is in the range of 400 to 600 with a 4-inch box-style mixer, trying not to entrain air. Gravity-fed hopper, plumb to the lower fluid section, is the best for single-leg airless application. Single-leg airless application equipment. Heated plural component airless spray equipment is the preferred method of application for the majority of Enviroline products. However, Enviroline products can also be applied by single-leg airless spray equipment with the correct setup and experienced crew. Available pressure and capacity for spray equipment should normally be at least 100 psi delivered at a minimum from a 250 CFM air compressor. All spray equipment must be in good working order, all internal parts in good order, ball and ball seats, sleeve and rod, packings and spray tips. In cold and/or windy weather, any exposed pumping equipment and paint lines should be insulated to reduce material heat loss. A heated hooch or trailer to work from is best. Remember, heat is your friend when applying Enviroline products. Airless spray pumps with ratios greater than 56-to-1 are preferred. Teflon packings are recommended, and all filters from the spray unit and the airless spray gun to be removed. Continue with single-leg airless application equipment. The paint hose typically should be 13 millimeter in diameter and insulated. Water pipe insulation found in your local hardware store works well. Maximum length of paint hose can be found in either the product data sheet or application guideline. The whip end connected to the gun should be 10 millimeter diameter by 3 meters in length or less. If a paint hose with a smaller ID is used, the maximum allowable length of paint hose will be reduced. I do not recommend smaller paint hoses. You could lose volume necessary for a successful application. The paint hose, whip end, and spray gun should be rated at a minimum 5,000 psi. Depending on air pressure capacity of the pump and local health and regulation, may want paint lines and gun pressure rated to the capacity of the pump. For instance, if a 62-to-1 airless is utilized, 6,200 psi rated paint lines may be required, even though typically less than 5,000 psi rating is adequate to spray apply Enviroline products. Tip sizes should be as recommended on the product data sheet. Should be reversible and not worn out. And there's more on single leg airless application. We recommend that both components are preheated between 30 and 35 C for 24 hours. Trace heated hose or insulated hose with an inline heater is recommended to maintain the correct and uniform application temperature. I recommend keeping the length of the paint hose as short as possible and no more than 30 meters. Always refer to the product data sheet and application guidelines for correct material temperatures during application. If material overheats during any part of the application process, it is recommended that the application is halted and the pump cleaned out immediately to avoid risk of material setting up in the hopper, pump, lines, and gun. Usually this is spotted by either the applicator losing the fan at the gun or the hopper tender sees the product beginning to set up in the hopper. Maximum application temperatures differ by product, but temperatures above 50 C should be generally avoided with a single leg application. Enviroline single leg airless setup. Enviroline 2405, 405 HTR, and 376F can be applied with a single leg airless with the equipment shown on this slide. For single leg airless setup, it starts with a minimum of a 56-to-1 pump. We did use 45-to-1s decades ago, spraying the predecessor of these products, so it can be done, just hard on the equipment. Minimum of a 90 cubic centimeter fluid section, which is important. Larger fluid section delivers volume, which along with heat is key to successful application. Moving on to the inline heater. The mixed paint coming out should be at 35 to 46 C and around 35 C at the spray gun for the best spray pattern. When you first start up, you should recirculate until the paint lines and gun heat up. Or I recommend keeping the hose and gun warm prior to application and begin to spray into a bucket until spray pattern is achieved. You'll lose a little mix this way, however less risk than possibly recirculating too long with a short pot life. The paint hose should be a maximum 15 meters of 13 millimeter diameter insulated hose, 30 meters if the hose is heated, and a 10 millimeter diameter 2 to 3 meter whip hose. Spray gun, I recommend, has the paint delivered direct to the barrel behind the spray tip with a live swivel connection to the whip line, achieving better throughput this way. WeWa 500F and the new Graco silver guns have no springs to deal with. Graco XTR5 and XTR7 delivers through the handle, again, no springs. They do have plastic grips for the hot handles. Enviroline thick film systems can be sprayed applied using tips from 19 to 35 thousandths. Reference the data sheets and application guidelines for accurate information. Hopper like you see to the right is better than the molded plastic hoppers that you'll find because there's 4 flat walls as opposed to the curves, corners, and pockets you find in the molded plastic version. Attached with quick disconnect fittings, sized to the lower foot valve assembly, this setup allows fast breakdown and clean out should the mix begin to kick in the hopper or you're cleaning up the equipment at the end of the day. When hot potting, it is important that you do not have more than 1 bucket mixed when the hopper is filled, and to dump the half or whole bucket just before the hopper has emptied. If you're too late dumping the fresh mix, will cavitate putting air into the spray line and irritating your spray technician, losing his beautiful spray pattern. Then mix the next bucket. Also important to scrape down the sidewalls of the hopper as the mix level drops. It's a rhythm. Mix, dump, scrape the hopper walls, mix a fresh pail, dump prior to hopper mix cavitates, and repeat. I know, the last slide had a lot of information regarding single leg application, and for the few and brave who do not have plural setup or the project not large enough to bring out the big guns. However, a good exercise in understanding the basics of industrial lining's airless application. Moving into plural component application, most Enviroline products are 2-to-1 ratio and supplied in 2 containers sold as a unit. Preheat both components overnight to around 30 to 35 C. For application of Enviroline 376F and 405 HTR, Part A can be heated to a maximum of 60 C and Part B a maximum of 43 C. Important to note, when recirculating during startup, bring Part A and B slowly to temperature. Depending on length of hose bundle, it may take several hours. With heated hoses, Part A temperature between 50 and 55 C and Part B between 40 to 43 C should be sufficient enough to spray out. Heated hoses should be around 50 to 60 C to maintain 43 to 46 C at the gun for best spray pattern. Agitate at low RPM, Part A and Part B in their own containers, scraping the sides and bottom of the container to ensure a complete mix. Load into appropriate containers or hoppers on the spray unit. Provisions of a warm shelter, heated hoses and hoppers will help maintain temperature during the application. More on plural component equipment setup. Application by heated plural component equipment is the most efficient and preferred method when working with Enviroline products, particularly when coating large areas. A pump capable of accurately delivering the correct mix ratio is essential. WeWa Dual Mix, Graco XP XM, or fixed ratio hydrocap pumps are recommended. Is one better than the other? I prefer the durability of WEWA. However, Graco has recently beefed up their equipment and recommend a 56:1 or larger airless. Lower fluid sections should be no less than 90 cc's. For instance, at 2:1 ratio, part A lower would be 180 cubic centimeters and part B lower at 90 cubic centimeters, delivering the volume for successful application. We recommend all filters removed from the spray unit and spray guns. Screens tend to clog with fillers and thick film and compromises volume throughput. Volume and heat are very important. 2 half-inch by 12 elemental inline static mixers are recommended. Located in line after the mixer manifold, I prefer to see one static mixer at the mix manifold and one between the paint hose and the whip line. And the paint hose should be at least 15 meters long to help integrate part A and B. Heated tanks and heated lines are normally required. Recommended temperature requirements can be found in the data sheet and application guidelines. On this slide, we will discuss paint hose setup for plural component airless application. For a 2:1 setup, I recommend part A hose should be 13 millimeters in diameter. Part B hose should be 10 millimeters in diameter. What the two diameters accomplish is delivering as closely as possible a 2:1 volume ratio to the mix manifold. Paint line off the mix manifold should be 13 millimeters in diameter and a maximum of 45 meters in length. Best to have a shorter paint line at 15 meters and a longer part A and part B heated hose bundle from the pump to the remote mixing block. The remote mixing block can easily be carried about inside the tank. The gun whip should be 10 millimeters in diameter and 3 meters or less in length, and all hoses, lines, and spray guns should be rated in accordance with the plural equipment pressure rating. Most Enviroline products require a minimum of 5,000 psi fluid pressure rated equipment for spray application. Be sure to check local legislation on pump to hose ratings. Importance of technical inspection and quality control. Technical inspection. Project control via regular inspection and inspection hold points is vital to a successful coating project. Items of particular attention during substrate preparation and application as follows. Steel cleanliness per the data sheets, application guidelines, and specifications if they're available. Correct equipment and setup. Remember, well-maintained and correct sizing of the equipment, and that volume and heat is your friend. Keeping an eye on environmental conditions for holding the abraded steel and during application and cure ensures a long service life. Measurement is important during application to monitor wet film thickness. Enviroline thick film systems hang so well, if not paying attention, tend to apply more than the required amount, running low with the product on hand before completion of the job. Post-cure inspection, a lot can be learned from a visual inspection, tells you how well the application went. Are there sags, runs, spray application from too far back, cold substrate and didn't flow well, and dry fall. Measurement of DFT does two things, records the dry film thickness, and that the owner received the asset within specifications or guidelines. Holiday testing is very important, particularly with aqueous solutions and any immersion environment that has water separation. Holidays, when left unchecked, will be the first source of corrosion, compromising the lining. Welds, corners, edges, and pitted steel can be difficult, providing a holiday-free film. A hardness test is the best way to know if the lining is adequately cured for service. The owner may find they can place back in service sooner than recommended in the data sheet. A completed Enviroline lining system should be uniform in color, gloss, and free of runs, sags, porosity, pinholes, fish eyes, soft spots, and debris. Holiday testing and visual inspection. We recommend performing holiday testing on coatings and linings, particularly those in immersion. Spark or holiday testing should only be done once or risk damaging the lining. Spark or holiday testing will detect cracks, pinholes, fish eyes, low dry film thicknesses, and cratering within a coating. We follow NACE SP-0188. For films greater than or equal to 20 mils, we recommend 100 volts per 25 microns. Visual inspection, as we discussed in the prior slide, you may find fish eyes or sissing caused by contamination of the substrate from grease, solvents, wax, silicone. Blistering can be due to a number of reasons, including presence of soluble salts, intercoat contamination, or on the underlying substrate, such as perspiration from a worker, or the substrate poorly cleaned prior to abrading. Cold wall effects, where you have an extreme thermal gradient between a cold exterior wall and elevated temperature commodities stored on the interior, or vice versa. Or switching commodities such as ethanol storage to diesel. If the lining does not have ample time for the alcohol to dry out, water settling out in the diesel will cause osmotic blistering in the coating. More on visual inspection. Cracking, flaking, and delamination can be caused by a number of reasons, including contamination from the usual suspects such as grease, oil, debris, soluble salts, insufficient surface preparation of not cleaning the substrate well enough, whether before or after abrading the substrate, incorrect surface preparation and not achieving a sharp angular profile as required, missing the overcoat window or an amine blush, compromising adhesion, incorrect coating system and not managing the immersion surface. Stress on the coating can happen where there is a large difference in thickness of the film, for instance, overbuilding in a corner where thin meets thick. To repair the defective area, it must be cleaned of contaminants and the coating removed. Correct surface preparation must be undertaken, surfaces must be clean and free from contamination, and the correct coating system for the end use must be selected and applied. Continuing with visual inspection. Amine, bloom, and blush are two slightly different chemical reactions at the surface of the lining during application and cure, having the same detrimental effect. Amine bloom are amines that have migrated to the surface due to exposure to high humidity, dissolve in the moisture, and leave a shiny or oily looking deposit behind. However, these amines at the surface may further react to moisture and carbon dioxide and become a blush. Either or can adversely impact the adhesion of subsequent coats. Amine blush is caused when the amine curing agent at the surface of the coating reacts with carbon dioxide and moisture to form a carbamate and can produce a blush or white spotting during the curing process. Sources of heat to warm the tank can be electricity, steam coil, or indirect fired heaters, whereby the exhaust containing contamination and carbon dioxide exits to the atmosphere to help prevent bloom or blush. Bloom is seen when temperatures drop below the dew point or during colder temperatures and high humidity, exhibiting a whitish patching or amber yellow, greasy or waxy appearance, and can be tacky to touch. Overcoat and inner coat adhesion are the primary concerns. However, with many single coat linings, this is not a concern. Generally, a hot water and soap wash should be sufficient to clean the surface. And now for repair procedures. Repair procedures are dependent upon the individual circumstances, but can typically be split into two broad categories. Major repairs. A major repair should be dealt with as if the project was beginning. In other words, treated as new surfaces and completed per the specification, and all previous recommendations should be followed. Minor repairs. This includes areas damaged either at the initial coating stage or during the operating service, and could include the problems we just looked at in previous slides. This repair section will focus on minor repairs. Minor repairs. The area to be repaired must be cleaned for SSPC-SP1. Any damaged coatings or corrosions should be removed by either vacuum blasting or utilizing hand tools per SP3 to expose the existing profile. Any pitting which does not need rewelding should be prepared by needle gun or cone grinder. Feather edges and abrade area immediately surrounding repair to remove the gloss and provide a key. Tape perimeter of repair and remove after application, but before full cure. Vacuum dust free prior to system application. Apply the lining system as detailed in the specification. If brush application is used, multiple coats may be needed to achieve specified thickness. Thick film, one coat systems may be easiest to repair with a trowel or putty knife. And to summarize all that you've listened to and read in the past 40 minutes, and to wrap it up, for surface preparation, cleanliness is key and surface profile does differ from product to product. For application, all equipment should be in good shape and required to fit the scope of the project. Stripe coating is a significant step to ensure a holiday-free film. Preheating and maintaining temperature of material delivers a successful application. Single leg equipment can be used, but plural component has the most flexibility and should be preferred. Whichever you choose, correct airless equipment setup is paramount to a successful application. Technical inspection and quality control. Environmental conditions should be strictly adhered to as per the data sheet and application guidelines. Wet film and dry film, visual inspection and holiday testing are necessary to ensure a long service life. Typical problems are caused by poor surface preparation or poor levels of cleanliness. Under repairs, we had minor repairs. What we discussed today require a very high level of cleanliness, and it's imperative that you follow the project specification, product data sheets, and application guidelines for the individual products. Beginning the second leg out of Lisboa, Portugal, and like our racing yacht and crew in 2018 around the world Volvo Ocean Race, Enviroline is high performance with durability and in for the long haul. I'll leave you with a true short story. In the early 90s, as a contractor with crews sandblasting and lining tanks, we were utilizing Industrial Environmental Coatings Corporation's single coat, fast cure, thick film epoxy. Sound familiar? I was on the phone with their marketing director and had a competitor's data sheet out on the desk that I was looking to switch out for an IECC product. She was lamenting on that the name of the company was such a mouthful and needing to come up with a brand name for their product line. Logging into my computer with my password and looking at another manufacturer's data sheet on my desk, I put the two together and came up with Enviroline. She said that might work. The rest is history, folks. I didn't even get a penny for my thoughts. Cheers, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this module.